In this episode, we'll cover what biodiversity is, how population growth increases environmental pressure through resource consumption, the growing global waste problem, and then consider strategies for protecting Earth's biological diversity. Biodiversity refers to the variety of different species of organisms on Earth or within particular ecosystems. This encompasses all forms of life, including plants, animals, fungi, and microorganisms. It also covers the genetic variation, which contributes to the complex web of interactions that maintains ecosystem functioning. Different species depend upon one another for food, shelter, and maintenance of suitable environments through complex networks of ecological relationships. This contributes to ecosystem stability and resilience. Consider how certain plant species modify soil chemistry, altering pH levels to create conditions suitable for other plants. Predators regulate prey populations, preventing overgrazing or resource depletion, whilst decomposers break down dead material, recycling nutrients essential for reuse by other organisms. These interconnected relationships create robust ecosystems capable of withstanding environmental changes. When ecosystems possess high biodiversity, they demonstrate greater resilience to disturbances. If one species declines due to disease or environmental change, other species can often compensate by performing similar ecological roles, maintaining ecosystem processes. This acts as ecological insurance, preventing ecosystem collapse when individual species face challenges. However, as biodiversity decreases, ecosystems become increasingly exposed to disruption. Human survival depends fundamentally upon maintaining significant biodiversity levels. We rely on diverse ecosystems for essential services, including food production, medicine development, climate regulation, and oxygen production through photosynthesis. Unfortunately, human activities are reducing biodiversity at unprecedented rates. A primary driver of biodiversity loss is rapid human population growth combined with increasing resource consumption. The global population now exceeds 8 billion people and continues rising, particularly in developing regions. Population graphs reveal dramatic exponential growth, especially during the 20th and 21st centuries. This growth trajectory places enormous pressure on natural resources and ecosystems as humans extract materials necessary for survival and development. When Earth's population remained relatively small, human environmental impacts were typically localized and ecosystems could recover. However, current population levels and consumption patterns create widespread environmental damage. Expanding human populations require increasing amounts of land for housing, agriculture, and industrial development. This expansion occurs primarily through habitat conversion, destroying natural ecosystems and displacing wildlife species. Population growth alone doesn't fully explain increasing environmental pressure. Global improvements in living standards mean individuals consume more resources than previous generations. People increasingly expect comfortable housing, lots of consumer goods, and high tech products. Meeting these expectations requires extracting raw materials, including fossil fuels for plastics production, metals for electronics and construction, and timber for various products. This accelerating resource extraction depletes natural resources faster than regeneration rates. Many critical resources face depletion if current consumption patterns continue. Non-renewable resources like fossil fuels and minerals cannot be replaced on human timescales, whilst renewable resources are being harvested beyond sustainable yields. This overconsumption generates another major environmental challenge: waste management. Increased production and consumption inevitably produce more waste, including hazardous chemicals requiring careful handling. Without proper waste management, pollution accumulates in ecosystems, damaging biodiversity and human health. Water pollution occurs through multiple pathways, severely affecting aquatic biodiversity. Sewage discharge introduces pathogens and substances that disrupt aquatic ecosystems, whilst industrial effluents contain toxic chemicals that bioaccumulate through food chains. Agricultural activities contribute significantly to water pollution through fertilizer runoff and pesticide contamination. These chemicals wash into rivers, lakes, and coastal waters during rainfall, affecting organisms far from application sites. Fertilizer runoff causes eutrophication, triggering algal blooms that deplete dissolved oxygen when decomposing. These conditions create dead zones where most aquatic life cannot survive, dramatically reducing biodiversity. Air pollution presents equally serious threats to biodiversity. Industrial processes and combustion release various atmospheric pollutants, including sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides. These pollutants directly harm organisms through respiratory damage and toxic effects. Sulfur dioxide emissions cause acid rain, which damages plant tissues and acidifies soils and water bodies. Acid rain particularly affects forests and freshwater ecosystems, causing species populations to decline and ecosystem degradation. Ground level ozone, formed through reactions between nitrogen oxides and volatile organic compounds, damages plant photosynthesis and reduces agricultural productivity. This affects both wild plant communities and crop systems supporting human populations. Land pollution creates persistent environmental problems affecting terrestrial biodiversity. Landfill sites concentrate household and industrial waste, potentially leaching toxic substances into surrounding soils and groundwater. Improperly managed landfills release methane, contributing to climate change and provide breeding grounds for disease vectors. Agricultural chemicals, including pesticides and herbicides, accumulate in soils, affecting soil organisms essential for nutrient cycling. These chemicals can persist for years, continuously impacting biodiversity and potentially entering food chains. Nuclear waste presents unique challenges, remaining hazardous for thousands of years. Despite underground storage, risks remain of contamination affecting future generations of organisms. These various pollution forms interact together, creating impacts exceeding individual effects. Multiple pollution sources reduce ecosystem resilience, making recovery increasingly difficult even when pollution sources are eliminated. Pollution directly reduces biodiversity through several mechanisms. Sensitive species die when exposed to toxic pollutants, creating gaps in food webs and ecological interactions. And non-deadly effects include reduced reproduction and increased disease sensitivity, gradually depleting populations. Habitat degradation through pollution makes environments uninhabitable for specialized species requiring specific conditions. Other species may increase, but overall species richness and ecosystem complexity decline. Recent decades have witnessed growing recognition of biodiversity's importance and threats it faces. Governments and organizations implement various conservation measures, including protected area establishment, endangered species programs, and habitat restoration projects. International agreements like the Convention on Biological Diversity coordinate global conservation efforts, Improved waste management practices reduce pollution impacts on biodiversity. Recycling programs decrease resource extraction and waste generation, whilst proper hazardous waste disposal prevents environmental contamination. Sustainable resource use strategies, including renewable energy adoption and sustainable farming, help maintain biodiversity whilst meeting human needs. These approaches recognize that human welfare depends upon healthy ecosystems. The future of biodiversity, and ultimately human civilization, depends upon transforming our relationship with nature. This requires fundamental changes in how we produce, consume, and dispose of materials.